Last time you came in, go.
Y'all good? Chris, y'all good? We'll call our regular session board meeting to session. Roll call, please.
Chairman McClendon.
Here.
Vice Chair Robinson.
Here.
Mrs. Hill. Here. Mrs. Jones.
Here.
Mr. Perez.
Here.
Mr. Smith.
Here.
Mrs. Thurman. Here. Mr. Walker.
Here.
Mr. Wingate.
Here.
Mr. Macon. Superintendent Dr. Robertson.
Here.
Okay, we have one addition to our agenda under delegations, and that is April Nielsen. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Hill. Yes. Mrs. Jones.
Yes.
Mr. Perez.
Yes.
Mrs. Robinson.
Yes.
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Mrs. Thurman.
Yes.
Mr. Walker.
Yes.
Mr. Wingate.
Yes.
Chairman McClendon.
Yes. Next, we'll have our pledge to the flag and meditation by Brent Eller, principal of East Hamilton High School.
You guys can be seated. I appreciate it. I wish they would do that at school when I came in, but anyway, so Dr. Robertson and board members, thank you for having us this evening. Brent Eller, the principal of East Hamilton High School. We have with us members of our JROTC program, a new program to East Hamilton this year we're very excited about. So I will turn it over to them. I will introduce our instructors, Major Eric Redlin and Master Sergeant Todd Tribby.
Chairman McClendon, members of the board, Superintendent Robertson, good afternoon. As Mr. Eller said, I'm Major Eric Redlin, the Senior Army Instructor for the new JROTC program at East Hamilton High School. I want to thank the board for this opportunity to provide the meditation this evening. With me today are Master Sergeant Todd Tribby. He's going to provide the word of the day. And some of my cadets, Gabriel Palma, my new incoming Alpha Company Commander, Cadet Huffstetler, one of my freshman platoon leaders, and Cadet Darian Moore, my Raider Commander, and that did a phenomenal job this year. They're all doing a great job as their first year cadets. And that is really all I have. I'll turn it over to Master Sergeant Tribby.
Good evening, everybody. And what I'm sure was an effort to calm my nerves, my wife just sent me a text that said, "We're watching you on YouTube." I didn't know we were going to be on TV tonight. But on the home page of our East Hamilton website, you'll find the phrase "Committed to Excellence." The unit insignia on our JRTC instructors reads "Leadership Excellence." In fact, I would challenge you to look at any organization out there and find one that doesn't proclaim to aspire to excellence in some form or fashion. But what is excellence? A few years ago, I was asked that question as we formed a mission statement for an organization, and in my quest for that answer, I went to Webster's Dictionary first. Their answer was the quality of being excellent, and I decided that Jane Bland, my senior English teacher, would not approve of that answer. So I looked further, and Oxford did a little better. It was the quality of being outstanding or extremely good. I equated both of those things with winning. The modern definition of excellence indeed seems to coincide with being the best or winning. Neither of those things are bad, and they're important. However, I don't think that fully explains what excellence really is. So I got in my Wayback Machine and took a look at the classics and settled on Aristotle, and he defined excellence or virtue, then being of two kinds, intellectual and moral. Intellectual excellence is the main, owes its birth and growth to the teaching, I thought that applied here, which requires experience and time, while moral excellence comes about as a result of habit. Aristotle, like Plato and Socrates before him, saw excellence as a virtue or a part of our character. I like to combine both of those schools of thought when I reflect on excellence. The constant effort to be the best in what I can be and to instill that in others, but also having the character and resilience to be able to get back up and go on when I get knocked down for trying things outside of my comfort zone. So as we take a moment of meditation, I challenge you to find excellence and how you will instill that virtue in our students. And now our three cadets will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
Thank you for that. We'll move on to our exemplars of excellence with Dr. Larry Reynolds, and then moving on to Dr. Sonia Stewart and Miss Murray.
Members of the board, everyone here gathered. I'm here very happy to let you know of a national honor that's been bestowed on one of our students at Hamilton County Schools. The Roriton Club is America's leading community service organization, and our local Harrison Roriton Club was founded on 3 guiding principles that include fellowship, goodwill, and community service. In our high school program, the Roriton Club follows the same principles. The Central High School Roriton Club is an active community service club that many students take part in. It's a student-led program that allows our future leaders to take part in serving our community. And Sarah Catherine Latham here is an 11th grader that has been in the Roriton Club for 3 years and has served as president for the last 2. And she has received previously the District Roriton of the Year Award twice. In January of this year, we were notified that Sarah Catherine here has been awarded the National Roriton of the Year Award at a national convention.
Hi, Chairman McClendon and members of the board. I would love to take this opportunity to recognize our Teachers Cabinet. It was founded in February of 2020, and initially they were set to be on 1 year of service with us, but due to COVID and how much great input that they were giving us continuously, we did ask them to stay on a little bit longer. The cabinet, as you can see, is made up of a diverse group of teachers throughout the district, and they have provided valuable input. So we'd like to recognize them tonight for their extended service. And some have actually agreed to stay on for the next year, so we appreciate that. So if y'all will come up, and Dr. Drake will help. We have a water bottle for you. We have a certificate. We're also having little plaques made for your classroom doors. So come on up. And so I'll call out everyone's name. So Audrey Alexander, Carrie Bishop, Brittany Brocklebank, Renee Bruzon, Kyle Carrasco, Jamila Carroll, Lennon Dyer, Teresa Granger, Coach Harden, Koila Hatcher, Jonathan Johnson, Adara Joyner, Kelly Kuhn, Heidi Meese, Heather Madrow, Jasmine Montgomery, Gretchen Roberts, Kristen Robertson, Erica Schmidt, Anna Sousa, and Kevin Varner. So thank you all so much. Your input has been just invaluable in the past year and a half. So thank you for all that you do every day. Thank you. I would also like to take this opportunity for one additional recognition. Dr. Edna Varner and Mr. Mark Neal are here with Project Inspire residents tonight. So I want to recognize them and their partnership. Dr. Varner. Thank you all so much.
Thank you all. We will move on to our presentations. Our first one is from the Hamilton County Schools Foundation.
Welcome back, Keith.
Well, good evening, Chairman McClendon, Dr. Robertson, members of the board. We look forward to this opportunity to be able to share just a little bit of information about the Hamilton County Foundation. Kind of feels like old times being up here. So first of all, let me just say, guess I need to make this work here. Just a little bit, just quickly about the foundation. We're a 501c3. We've tried to align our activities and our support to the school system's strategic plan. And if you look over to the right, you can see our board members. It's a broad set of we have a broad interest as well as representatives from our business community. The thing I would say about this board of directors, they're all advocates of Hamilton County Schools. Just a quick timeline. We were established in August of 2020. November that year, we did announce to the public. We'd actually planned a huge press conference, but due to COVID, we had a much more muted press release. March of 2021, we had our 501c3 formally approved. At that time, we elected our Executive Committee, Finance and Development Committee, and in August, we hired our Executive Director, Krista Barclay, and she's with me here tonight. So how do we support Hamilton County Schools? We, as we initially organized, we support through basically the strategic plan. All our activities, we try to tie back to that strategic plan. But about a year into the, as we kind of was learning and growing a little, we realized that we really needed to focus in on some key priorities. So we sat down with the district and identified kind of a wish list or a priority list for them, and it resulted in that our focus, while we still support the strategic plan overall, we do focus on literacy, the arts, innovation, and community forward. So just these are three examples of several projects that we've supported. The Brown and Battle Innovation Labs, we were able to raise about $120K for those labs. Examples was Hamaco Foundation, Skillion Husky Foundation, Osborne Foundation, Unum, and then Shaw provided the flooring for the labs. The Mobile Learning Labs, Regions Bank was one of our partners for that. And then our literacy celebration at UTC. We worked closely with UTC and the district to be able to have a literacy celebration. So we had basically the upper section of McClellan Gym filled with Hamilton County students. Ball game wasn't great that day, but they had a lot of fun. They got a lot of recognition. Our faculty and leaders participated in events during the game, and then at halftime, some of the students that had achieved was recognized with an opportunity to come out onto the floor at halftime. So this year, kind of give you where we stand. This year, at this point, we've raised a little over $400,000. But I want to highlight two key donations. We had two $25,000 donations from one individual to Hickson Middle School and Hickson High School. We had another $5K donation to Collegiate Academy. So what we've done as part of setting up our donation, our website and the donations for our website, is that we have not only our priorities and general fund listed, as we have donors sign in and indicate that they want to support, but they can also go to a drop-down box and select a school. So this is just an example of just an example of those donations. We've had some other donations, but we Krissa met earlier this week with the principals to be sure we're aware of this, and we expect to see activity in this area pick up. So some upcoming events. You'll receive an invitation to these, but I wanted to just kind of give you a high-level view of what we've got going on. Teacher Supply Hub, former Hillcrest Elementary in the library. We've converted that space. We had a lot of support from community partners, Unum, Chattanooga Red Wolves, First Horizon, the Junior League Staples. We've had over 50 volunteers in sorting and organizing supplies. Really, when I say grand opening, it's kind of a reopening and it's really a continuation of a lot of the good work that was done. We moved it from West 40th Street. And when we, some of the things we kind of got planned for this is not only the grand opening, but as we're finishing out the school year, as we have teachers retiring, they may be interested in donating some of the supplies that they're no longer going to need. We also are planning an event for some of our new teachers in the summer, so to kind of give them a little bit of a priority in being able to get in and acquire some supplies as they start the school year. Our next event is Hamilton County Schools Heroes Awards Luncheon, and this is in May 13th at the Chattanooga Convention Center. And this is an event that covers several areas. First of all, we want to recognize our heroes. We'll be recognizing teachers from each learning community, also teachers from the arts, innovation, and literacy, as well as looking at recognizing a couple of our former alumni. We want to engage the community in this. We want to showcase some of our students. We just talked to Colonel Brooks. We want to include our ROTC as part of this celebration. So he and I will be collaborating to see how we can maybe engage them. But we've got other plans for some of our other students. But it's also a fundraiser. And as you can see on the right side of the slide, we've got sponsorship levels for some of our business and local folks to be able to participate in this and get some recognition. But I'd be remiss if I didn't say, even with these sponsorship levels, as I've reviewed our donations, and a lot of our donations are not at this level. We're counting on some of our businesses to step up and have an interest in Hamilton County Schools to help us out with this. But we see a lot of our donations, $150, probably 2/3 of our donations are in that range. And so we really appreciate that. And they're kind of really the backbone of what the foundation is about. So I want to really kind of, in closing, kind of come back full circle and talk just a little bit about what we want to do and kind of what the vision of the foundation is. First of all, we want to be a partner to Hamilton County Schools and engage and have interaction so that we understand how we can best support. We want to be able to fundraise and engage in our community to get them involved with us in helping support students, with the ultimate goal is that those students are going to be successful or have a successful future. As we go through this mission, we obviously appreciate any support that you can provide to us, and we probably are going to sometimes ask you for some of your influence as we move forward. So we do appreciate this opportunity, and my phone number, I think most of you probably have that, but Carissa's is also there. Feel free to give us a call if you have questions or if you just want to point somebody in our direction. Several board members have done that, and that's have turned into be donors and supporters, so we really appreciate that. Any questions?
Yeah, I can't believe you didn't change your phone number.
Well,
That shows what a good man you are.
a good point, good point. Any
Mr.
other
Wing-
questions?
Mr. Wingate.
I don't have a question. One, Keith, I was pleasantly surprised to know you're involved. I thank you for that. I mean, I've known for a little while, but thank you for coming back and staying involved. I know how much our school system means to you. And Chris, I thank you very much for what you're doing. And I will say the basketball game was a big hit for my three. I know that probably there were some Division I athletes not as excited about playing a game at 11 o'clock in the morning, but if we can coerce them into doing that again. I know there were a lot of kids that had a really good time, and I know a lot of parents who really thought that was an unbelievable way to let those kids go, just have a little time and relax and just goof off a little bit, so it's good.
I did absolutely no work other than just go to the game. So the district staff, Carissa, other volunteers, great job. It was a logistical challenge. But they pulled it off and did a really good job. And it was a loud at 11 o'clock watching the ball game. It was pretty loud that day.
Mr. Smith.
Keith, thank you. Carissa, thank you, and for you guys forging this trail. And I as being a member of the board and an advocate, I just encourage you guys, my peers here, to get involved in this initiative with your own personal philanthropy, if you will. All of us have things we like to support. And there's a lot of folks here tonight that have an interest in public education, or you wouldn't be here. So what a great place to invest your own philanthropy and get involved in this. But thank you, Keith, and your retirement still involved, and we appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you. Y'all have a great evening.
Oh, we got two more.
Oh,
You're
I'm
not getting
sorry.
away that easy. Mr. Perez.
Kind of following along the same lines, and this is really more for the public, but I do get the question, how do I contribute, how do I donate? And so it's important for people to know that this being a separate 501c3 allows you to donate, and my understanding, if you go online, you can donate specifically to a school that
That's
you're
correct.
interested in contributing to. I just pulled a number to give an example. I was doing it right here of, and I could only find all matching on 2018, so I'd have to work on this a little more, but just our top 3 private schools in 2018 raised $22 million in contributions, and we're so far at $400,000. So my hope truly is, and that's nothing against those schools, I think people who support and want to contribute to that, in addition to the cost of attending. But my hope is that really this will take off, and that many of our needs and many of our opportunities that we have ahead of us can be somewhat resolved, at least a little bit, through those same excited donors contributing to our schools in the same way at whatever level. So I've said this before, I'll keep saying it till it happens. I want to go to a grocery store somewhere in this town and be asked, do you want to add an extra $1 for Hamilton County schools? And so when I go there and I get asked that question, I look forward to being able to say yes. In addition, Mr. Smith, to contributing monthly if I can. So anyways, thank you all very much.
Ms. Thurman.
Yeah, Keith, I was just going to tell you my grandson was there too, so I'm not going to let Joe have all the bragging rights. My grandson was there too, and he really enjoyed it, and we do appreciate it. I know it was a logistic nightmare. I heard about it, but y'all did pull it off. Justin, y'all did a good job.
Lessons learned. Opportunity to do better next year.
Thank y'all. Next, we'll move to our student achievement update.
Good evening, Chairman McClendon, Superintendent Robertson, and members of the board. I'm excited to talk to you today about our Future Ready board update, specifically around, I'm having issues here. There we go. Yeah, so today we'll be focusing on accelerating student achievement, which is one of our 5 key areas, and we will specifically be talking about literacy. So to focus today, we'll start with some framing around the work of literacy curriculum in Hamilton County Schools. I have 2 of my colleagues, Dr. Yvette Stewart, who is the Director of Elementary Learning, and Dr. Jamie Paris, who's the Director of Secondary Learning, who will be here to talk about their respective areas. They'll give you an overview of the adopted curriculum for literacy in both elementary and in secondary, and then I'll come back up and talk about next steps for literacy curriculum implementation. So to frame our work, this is a familiar phrase. It's sitting behind you. You've probably heard it a million times. But our just cause for Hamilton County Schools is that we do want to see all children thrive and experience a future without limits. And as we also look at accelerating student achievement, we have strategies to be able to help students meet that just cause. And those are deeply understanding state academic standards, setting clear learning targets for every lesson, building rigorous and aligned assessments, consistently implementing instructional best practices, and then closing the opportunity gap. We also know that there's no way we can be successful if we don't partner with families. And so we talk about this being the vertical spine of our district, partnering with families, and then also realizing at the district level how we work with schools, how we provide professional learning, how we provide curriculum and curricular resources, how schools are also able to lead the individual classrooms in their school. So to frame the work, in 2018, you may be familiar with a report called The Opportunity Myth done by TNTP, and they did a meta-analysis of many different schools and school districts and really took a look at what are the key elements that have to be present for a school to be successful and for students to be successful. And they really landed on 4 key things that I would bring to your attention. First is consistent opportunities to access grade level assignments. And here I would add the word text too. It's important when we think about literacy that we give consistent opportunity to have grade level text and assignments in front of students on a daily basis. Strong instruction, obviously it's important for our students to receive strong instruction where they do a lot of the thinking in the lesson. And deep engagement, I'd add the word ownership to that, student ownership, that they are owning the learning that's happening in the classroom. And then lastly, teachers that not only hold high expectations for students, but also believe that they can meet those grade level standards. And so when we think about any type of curriculum, any type of support, any type of professional learning, we're always holding steady to those 4 key areas. In Hamilton County, we talk a lot, and this may be something that you've seen before, around the instructional core and student learning being at the center, and we talk about the what, the how, and the how well. So when we talk about curriculum, when we talk about materials, when we talk about support, we're talking about the what, making sure that we first start off giving teachers and students curriculum that's aligned to state standards, and that teachers are teaching with clear learning targets. And then that guides our how. And so that's how we work with teachers, how we provide professional learning to teachers as they build their instructional practices. And then our aligned assessments always take a look at how well we're doing that, both formative and in a summative fashion. You've probably seen this before, but I'll put up the most recent TN Ready data that we have in 3rd through 5th grade as a reminder. We start assessment in 3rd grade whenever it comes to TN Ready. And on the right-hand side, I'll orient you to the fact that even in that gap year between, we did not have an assessment in 2020, but in 2020, 2021, we did see in that implementation year that Hamilton County students in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade were scoring ahead of where the state was. And that has not been the case in the past, but we were very pleased to see that that is moving in that direction. Is it in the place where we want it to be? No. We have a Future Ready 2023 goal of 3rd grade students, but we're glad to see that we are making movement in some areas where historically it has been stagnant. And on the left-hand side, you'll see comparisons in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade from 2019 to 2021. And you'll see maybe a slight gain, a couple of slight decreases, but remembering what happened to our students in that gap year of COVID, and knowing that our students left in March of 2020, and last year had a very interesting year that they had to navigate, as well as teachers. And so we were glad to see that we still were holding steady and didn't see dramatic drops as compared to the year prior to COVID. So at this time, I'm going to invite Dr. Yvette Stewart to come and talk to you briefly about our K through 5 literacy.
Good evening. I am Yvette Stewart. I am the Director of Elementary Teaching and Learning here in Hamilton County Schools, and I'm honored to talk briefly with you tonight about K-5 literacy. Impacting our young learners and increasing reading proficiency of every student by the end of 3rd grade is the focus of our work in elementary. We see here how greatly it impacts the future outcomes of our students. Therefore, we've put intentional measures in place to meet this goal. Specifically, the game changer has been ensuring strong instruction in every classroom. That begins with a sound curriculum and aligned instructional materials. And thanks to you, every elementary teacher in Hamilton County Schools has that at their disposal. Our elementary curriculum is EL education, and it's the framework that teachers use to plan, to implement, and assess the learning outcomes for their students. The curriculum includes instructional materials and resources that are aligned to state standards, and teachers do not have to create those materials or purchase them on their own. Those two things together gives every student the opportunity to thrive. In our K-2 classrooms, teachers are setting the foundation to build strong readers. There are 2 hours of dedicated literacy per day, and teachers spend 1 hour of that dedicated time teaching students how to decode the English language with explicit phonics lessons and activities that are sequenced appropriately within the curriculum. I do note here that we lovingly call this our first year of implementation of this curriculum because our first year was a year of disruption. But even in the midst of that challenging year, when we look at our benchmark performance over time, so far, our youngest learners are steadily soaring and showing very positive progress in ELA in spite the difficult years that we've had to push through. We attribute that work to what we've done with our literacy adoption. Another way that we're supporting our curriculum adoption is training on foundational skills, instruction, and understanding the research behind the science of reading. The state trained educators all across the state this past summer, and 450 educators within Hamilton County Schools were trained, which was the highest number in a single school district in the state of Tennessee. Since then, we've internally trained over 450 more educators in the Science of Reading course, which currently means we're well over 50% of all of our educators in Hamilton with an elementary license to teach reading. They now have this background. That's quite impressive to have that many at this point. This training will become a state requirement for licensure renewal for all teachers beginning next year, so we're ahead of the game there. Additionally, there's continued support within the curriculum that builds on what was learned in K-2. Beyond second grade, foundational literacy skills are reinforced with an hour of language practice for students in grades 3 through 5. Again, teachers have strong instructional materials and resources at their fingertips to strengthen the reading skills of their young learners through time with texts, with ideas, with building their skills that are introduced in the knowledge building portion of that 2-hour literacy block. So what do supporting classrooms that have these resources look like? Our detailed implementation plan includes extensive training and professional learning opportunities on the curriculum for all teachers, for all building leaders, and district leaders, including myself, to continue to build our confidence with leading literacy work within school buildings. We've done that for the past 2 years, and there's plenty more to come. Real-time support for instructional coaches who are very instrumental in the instructional focus for teachers in every building. And last but not least, our structured district learning walk process for district leaders is designed to collect timely data and identify trends, then have very rich collaborative conversations about the impact and adjustments that we need to make on our strategy district-wide. So I'll end with this quote from teachers because they can tell you more about the curriculum than I can. This is what one teacher said. The EL curriculum offers daily opportunities for my class to read text on and above grade level, which gives my students so much confidence when they are practicing on their own in small groups. I love that the resources provided with EL are purposeful and good resources. I am really enjoying teaching this year, and I've enjoyed seeing my students really love learning. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Jamie Paris. I'm the high school teaching and learning director. And much like Dr. Stewart, our implementation plan is very similar. So our adopted curriculum is from SAVIS. It's My Perspectives. We're in our second year of implementation, although, as Dr. Stewart said, it feels like we're back in a first year again. It's important to note that we've not really had a chance to be in front of our teachers very much in person. A lot of our PD has been virtual over the past 2 years. It is one of the approved curriculum from the TDOE, and it's our curriculum through 2026. It's important to note how the curriculum is built. There are consumable textbooks, which allow students to mark in the books, keep their notes. It serves as their notebook, keep their ideas. It is their text. It is how they interact with the text on their own. There's a robust digital platform that allows them to do the same work digitally, so they can do it from their Chromebooks. In fact, it's such a robust platform that we will still be learning it over the course of the adoption. There's just so much in there. There are print and digital novels to be used for choice reading, but whether in book clubs or in summer readings. And then it integrates with our learning management system, Canvas. So the way, much like elementary, the way secondary supports our implementation in 612 We have responsive quarterly curriculum guides, which help teachers navigate this robust system. Those curriculum guides are adjusted as the benchmark data comes out. So as we start to get new data, we make adjustments to those benchmarks. So we're making real-time data pieces to help teachers. We ask teachers to do that in the classroom. So we also have started doing that with our guides as well. We have ongoing meetings with Savvis, the publisher, to make sure that we are staying true to the design of the curriculum. We have them look at our curriculum guides as well to make sure we haven't compromised anything inside the curriculum, and to make sure we're fidelity of implementation, make sure we're using it the way it should be used. And then our professional learning communities are really focused around collaborative planning, really helping teachers dig into the work collaboratively and not independently so that you have the work together. The professional learning we launched in the summer of 2020. So just to put in context, we adopted the curriculum and you all approved the adoption in March of 2020. Schools shut down or went virtual right after that. And then we started up PD. By the end of the summer of 2020, we had over 70% of our secondary teachers trained in the curriculum. They were hungry for something. For the longest time, they were having to look for their own materials, search those out, and it was finally something that that was curated for them, and now they can focus on actually teaching their craft. We have ongoing training since that time through summer, throughout the school year. It's important to note that we make sure we have training for both new users and experienced. We constantly have new teachers coming on board, so we've got to make sure that we're training them in the curriculum as well. To date, through district in-service days, summer trainings, coaching cycles, everything else we have, all of our teachers have been trained, and we just keep training new teachers as they come on board and go through. We have professional development at all levels. That's administrators, that's at the district level and at the building level. It's really hard to support something you don't understand, so we try to really start at the leadership level. Instructional coaches also receive training around the curriculum, and teachers as well. And finally, as Dr. Stewart mentioned, we have learning walks that happen to all learning communities. It allows us to see the curriculum in action so that we can make adjustments in our supports and how we can help teachers in their goal to improve student learning. I do want to say, as we transition to a quote, I do want to say I'd like to thank this board for having the courage and the forethought to go ahead and make the purchase in the pandemic. The consumable books that went home for students, the digital texts, and the able to work from a Chromebook, we would not have been equipped to address the challenges of the pandemic if this board hadn't have stepped up and made the purchase. So I really want to say thank you on behalf of the teachers and the principals in our department. I'll end with a quote. I love, as you saw Dr. Stewart's quote, I love reading quotes from literacy teachers. They're always well crafted. Sometimes I have to even look up the words they use sometimes because it's so well crafted. The My Perspectives curriculum allows educators to teach students to the depth and rigor of the Tennessee ELA state standards, the use of diverse and complex texts. Additionally, I love that the My Perspectives curriculum aligns with our district's vision for literacy as we seek to develop deep thinkers who craft independently, who can independently read and analyze text, write clearly, and communicate effectively with each other. And another one who is simple and to the point. These came from our trainings over the summers. I'm a fan of My Perspectives. The texts are both complex and engaging. And with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Freeman.
So as we conclude our comments, really what we start to think about is how do we move from implementation with fidelity to implementation with integrity. And so you've heard that we adopted among some extenuating circumstances, but still pushed forward in developing teachers, and teachers really responding to that work as well. And so when we think about that move from fidelity to integrity, making sure that we're maintaining the goals of the lesson, making sure that in literacy instruction that we're still ensuring that the lesson is rigorous and challenging and meets the grade level shifts, knowing where you are in the long term. We think it's important for the teacher that teaches in one grade level to understand where students are coming from when they come to them, and what the long game is as they move into deeper grade levels, and also making sure that we are strategically adjusting to meet the new needs of our students. And as always, we in Hamilton County believe that every student deserves an excellent teacher, every teacher deserves access to an excellent leader, and every school deserves access to excellent resources like our literacy curriculum to meet the diverse needs of students. And with that, I'll open it up to any questions.
Any questions from the board? Ms. Hill.
Thank you. I appreciate what you all have been implementing, and I thank you very much for the level of detail that you've brought to this. Quick question about achievement. I noticed that we've got a drop-off from 3rd grade to 5th grade, and I'd like to understand what your hypothesis is about why that's happening and how this new curriculum over the last couple years, we should expect it to help.
Sure. I'll give some statements, and then Dr. Stewart, if you have anything you want to add. I'm going to jump to the last question that you had around how do we hope that this curriculum is going to help. Dr. Stewart mentioned earlier that as we look at our K through 2 benchmark data especially, we're starting to see increases in where we are over time. It's especially interesting to look at 1st grade benchmark data. And if you think about where those students are in 1st grade, think about the fact that they actually started their kindergarten year with a new approach on foundations and foundational skills and the science of reading and things of that nature. And seeing those students having gone through that in kindergarten and then what's happening in 1st grade, we're seeing increases in that achievement. So when we think about the second part of your question is, how do we think this is going to impact it? I think the focused support that we're giving teachers around the science of reading, the focused support that we're giving around phonics instruction, as we work to continue into integrity, there's a skills block where we'll get more intentional with students in small groups and continue to press forward with that. I think that that's how you'll continue to see increases there. As she comes to talk about maybe a hypothesis from 3rd to 5th grade drop, the other thing that I would add is when you think about the 70-30 slide that we talk about quite a bit, and we look at the students that fall into one or more student groups. The other part of that is the intentional work that we're doing on opportunities and access and making sure that our RTI systems are aligned. And so what we haven't talked about today is the RTI work that's happening with reading interventionists in Tier 1 and Tier 2 and how we are providing platforms for them to increase. Do you want to speak to 3rd through 5th grade?
Well, I just simply want to say, give us a little time. 3rd grade students that we had last year were in 2020, were our first students that had exposure to this curriculum that they need. So I can't wait for you to see those kindergarten students who have had 3 years of explicit phonics instruction, a deep understanding of complex texts, and have had that experience with understanding how to become a strong reader. So there are gaps. There are some things that our 3rd graders haven't had exposure to prior to the curriculum that we adopted. So I would say that we are working on and we're seeing great gains in closing those gaps with the right resources in teachers' hands.
Okay, thank you. And Blake, when you all come back to us with this again, I would appreciate it if we could have the disaggregated data so that we could see by subgroup how those students are achieving.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
Mr. Walker.
Yes, thank you for the time you put together this presentation. I'd like to see in the future a survey of parents and their opinion of EL education and how it's rolled out, and maybe you guys could do a survey across the board and bring that information back to us.
Ms. Thurman.
Yeah, one thing that some teachers have talked to me about is they're concerned that we're doing all of this. It's just very, I guess you call it intentional. I'm not sure the words change from time to time about what you use, but you just really drill down on the students all the time about reading. She says, but we're not teaching the children to love to learn, we're not teaching them to learn to love to read. We're teaching them to read, but not love to read. And if they love to read, they will read more. And she was very upset that the teachers never really got time to read to the students. It was continually pressing on them all the time. And from playing sports, I know you don't want to practice, train all the time, and you never get to play. And a lot of kids get burnt out on just that, and they don't really even get to learn to love to read, because after they finished with all that, they don't even want to pick up a book and look at it because they're tired of just being pushed all the time. Another question I have is we've said here tonight that the board has given you everything that you need. The teachers are getting all the training that they need. Everything's looking good. In a couple of years, if we don't see a big increase in this, who is going to answer for that? Because since I've been on the board, our scores have really just stayed. I mean, they haven't moved much. The needle hasn't moved much at all. I've been on this board since 2004, and we're still at 30, 35%, 38%. Who is going to be held accountable for that? If we're doing everything that we're doing, we can do to give you what you need, the tools that you need, who's going to be held accountable?
Yeah, so I'd love to address that. As an administration, we'll be held accountable. This literacy work is difficult work. We see it across the nation, and I know the community likes to point out that Hamilton County is at 30. You look across the nation, it's similar, right?
Yep, right.
And so large districts that serve diverse students across the nation are experiencing similar things. And so in terms of accountability, we're going to be held accountable. I'll talk also a little bit to the question that you asked before. To be quite honest, in the 13 years that I've been here, we have not had a coherent approach to teaching literacy. And what this is a coherent approach to teaching literacy. And anytime you make a second order change, it's going to be difficult and we're going to get some pushback. But again, to the integrity piece of implementation, that's what's going to get us to results. I'll just say personal anecdote here is, my daughter been in Hamilton County, was in elementary, on grade level reader, and in her elementary years got very little actual tier 1 instruction because we were focusing so much on small group instruction and interventions. The biggest move that we can make to ensure that each and every student is achieving is to improve our tier 1 instruction, and that's what this move is trying to do. Number one, a coherent approach to instruction of literacy, and number two, ensuring that each and every student is getting high quality tier 1 instructional practices.
Well, nobody wants this to work any more than I do because I'm tired of seeing 7th graders read on 2nd grade level. And so, like I say, I just want somebody to be accountable, and I do hope that this works. I pray that this works. It's going to have to work. We're going to have to fix this. Thank you.
Ms. Robinson.
Thank you for the presentation. I actually wanted to talk about page 13 of the presentation, the 2-hour block of literacy. I have heard feedback from teachers that this is actually a very strenuous and difficult thing to implement. So I'm just curious, are we surveying our teachers that are implementing this, or are we relying on their principals to give you feedback? Are we actually talking directly to classroom teachers? How are we really digging in and figuring out if teachers are able to take the plan and implement it the way that we hope? And then certainly at this point, we've got a lot of burnout happening with teachers, and so I do take that feedback seriously, and I'd just love to hear more about what you guys are doing around that.
Yeah, we talk to teachers all the time, and it really is a lot of training and support that is needed to do this work really well. That 2 hours of literacy time is very intentional. It is, they have all the resources and the information that they need, but it's the training that they also need. They're, as Dr. Robertson mentioned, in years past, they haven't had this amount of instructional resources available to them. And also, it's really is a totally different way of teaching and thinking about how to teach students. So we've done a lot of dedicated time with trainings and support, which is one feedback loop. We've also had several surveys. We do one at the beginning of the year and the end of the year that ask teachers what do they need, what's their perception of implementation, and couple that certainly with administrative input. But I spend lots of time in buildings and in classrooms talking to teachers, and it is a lift. It is something that they haven't had before. But I do feel like teachers feel like they have a lot of support and a lot of training, and we're giving them that time to really do that. The very first year we focused on one section of their 2-hour literacy block and really tried to build some knowledge and some confidence in that part. And then this year we're spending amount of time doing the second half, which is focusing on that small group instruction and really understanding how to work with kids and where they are and take them forward. So it is a continuous process, and we will be right alongside them to support them in implementation.
Yeah, well, that's great. And I'm glad to know that you're in classrooms and actually like witnessing and seeing it. I think that I heard one thing you say, that you do a survey at the beginning of the year and one at the end of the year. I would encourage you to think about doing more often surveys, because truthfully, if I'm just being very honest and transparent about teacher culture, I don't think they tell you the truth a lot of times.
Yeah.
I mean, they call us board members, and I think they tell us things that like they do not share with, you know, their principals or, you know, people that they, you know, view as higher ups. They also share things with their students' parents. And so I just really encourage you to think about maybe like, how do we get more like consistent feedback? Just because some schools may be absorbing it differently than others, just based on the call, like some of the feedback I've gotten. So, and I'm happy to talk more specifically to you as well, of course. Yeah. Cool. Thank you.
And I'll add too, like on top of the surveys that we talk about, we also, just the way that our organization is created, we have learning communities, we have academic leads. Those academic leads are talking to our content leads, and so that even though it's anecdotal, we do receive that as well. And I'll say too, like in the first couple of years, or sometimes we say the first year of implementation, it is a lot. It's a lot of resources to have. But I'll tell you, as a former high school English teacher, I was handed a piece of paper that said, "Don't teach these books because I teach them," and that was it. And so, it's a good thing to have a lot of resources. It is a lot to go through, but I think as we continue to go over time, as we move from that fidelity into authenticity and integrity, that it will become easier.
Mr. Prez.
So a few things. One, I hear this less. I heard it earlier as well from, or last semester more from teachers, but I wrote it this way, so I'll say how I wrote it. But that the losses need to be acknowledged. In you know, like the reality is the curriculum keeps going, but the last 2 years have had learning losses. And that those have to be more recognized and accepted by administrators as a reality, right? Because you're getting kids who have had 2 years of very non-traditional education and who weren't learning at the same level. So, and that leads me a little bit to, but I won't go into it here, but to an understanding of a curriculum that builds on each other and how that works within losses and differences, but I don't expect you to explain all that to me. Second, and I'm going to get more info, I'm just going to say it here, but someone did mention to me that, which I think is great, one the consumables I've heard is the amazing thing of this, but that ELL, there's an issue about ELL consumables in the process. So I'm going to find out more because they were like, you know, while everyone else is getting all this, we're not getting that for them to take home and work. Sure. So I'll find out more and get you information on that.
Please do.
The third is just, and again, a question that I don't expect you to answer here, but or fully here. It's impossible to, and even if you can point us to resources that kind of talk about this more. But why? I mean, you said it. Nationally, this is a trend. Locally, it's a trend within groups. It's a reality. And as you mentioned, Dr. Robertson, shortly after your incredible speech on Tuesday, no, you did a great job. Thank you. But immediately people address, it's almost what everybody wants to come at, right? Like we're not hitting this target. And so if you were to say, like, this is why reading is hard these days. I don't know if ever in our history of this country we've hit those targets. I'm not sure, but what is the biggest challenge that we face when we're trying to teach reading?
I'll say a couple things, and then I invite anybody else to reply. So to your first question about how do you think about where to start whenever a student has experienced 2 years of just, you know, and I have 3 kids in Hamilton County schools too, and I can tell you as an 8th grader, a 5th grader, and a kindergartner. So I witnessed this as a parent, like, where do you start? It's what the whole nation is trying to grapple with. There's a concept around accelerating, not remediating. And so it's that concept, and I invite you to, if you want to read that report, Accelerate, Don't Remediate. What it talks about is, instead of thinking that I have a 3rd grader whose last normal year, quote unquote, was in kindergarten, now I have to spend all of 3rd grade trying to make up everything from 1st grade and everything from 2nd grade. There's not enough time. There's not enough hours in the day. There's not enough days in the week. There's not enough days in the school year. And so Accelerate, Don't Remediate, we refer to that in the learning office around, let's start with the grade level. Let's start where they're supposed to be right now. And then in the midst of that on grade level instruction, identify, okay, where are the gaps, and then fill them in that immediate time. But it is something that we're having to grapple with. As far as like, you know, what is, you know, you're right. Dr. Robertson talked about it earlier. It's a national issue. I'd point to a couple things. Remember, when we talk about reading versus literacy, it's 2 different things. And I know that we've talked about that before, and we've actually produced some research around that too. You know, reading is focusing on a student's ability to decode and understand a text. That's grabbing a piece of paper, reading it, and being able to say, hey, here's what I read. When we get into our assessments, this goes a lot deeper into writing, speaking, listening, comprehending, analyzing, evaluating text. What's the author's purpose? What were the poetic devices? All of those things. And so I think that's an important thing to think about as we think about that. I think about another statistic that we look at in Hamilton County schools is K readiness, and how that's correlating to where students are by that 3rd grade marker. So that's something that we have to really dig into, what's happening prior to them ever stepping foot into our hallways. And I would say through collaborations with Early Matters, through collaborations with Chattanooga 2.0, with other entities, with pre-K, with trying to get into even the doctor's offices and provide to them, hey, did you know this is what your child needs to be doing prior to them coming to school? That's a big place where we have to start, so that when they come to us, we can make sure that we can get them to where they need to be by 3rd grade. Yeah.
Mr. Smith.
Blake, you gave us that data of how we're outperforming the state, and I don't know. Am I supposed to be happy about that? I
No.
mean, because the state's doing a terrible job, and Dr. Robertson referenced the national issue. I'm glad to hear that we're spending that extra hour. It seems like a good strategy. I'd like to know if we're also doing that with 3 through 5. And then I'm seeing, just on a daily basis, 7th and 8th and 9th grade kids that can't read a 2-syllable word. I mean, it's just heartbreaking. And, maybe I look at things that aren't even possible, but you reference 2 hours, and I think you referenced that seemed like a long time. But if you can't read, you can't learn. So why do science and social studies and all this other stuff if you can't read? Why don't we just pull them out and do nothing but learn to read? And I recognize we can't do that. The state won't let us do that. But the other thing I'd like to know, that's one of my questions. Are we doing that with 3 through 5, the 2-hour thing? My other question is, I watch our teachers who are working so hard. I mean, it's amazing what they're doing. And they can't fix this alone. And so with this new curriculum and stuff that we're trying to do, are we spending time trying to get the parents? You referenced your children. I bet you read with your kids every night. I know you do. Are we encouraging our parents and teaching our parents? Because that's where the problem's at. It's the house, not the schoolhouse. At the house. So does this curriculum do anything to encourage, trying to get the parents to come alongside of us. That's a mouthful.
I'll talk to a couple of them, and then if Dr. Stewart wants to talk about 3 through 5, I think that's fine. So what we said earlier, vertical spine, remember, we have to partner with parents. That's where we are utilizing conversations with those outside entities that are outside of Hamilton County Schools. And yes, we are encouraging parents. We want them to read. I know that my child's school, there's a sheet that I have to fill out to make sure my child's reading. We're reading every single night, and I know that many of our elementary schools are doing the same thing. We would always encourage parents to continue to read with their children. I think the great thing about some of the, Dr. Parrish referenced earlier, the digital aspects of some of our texts too, have the ability for students to listen to the text being read to them if they may come from a home where there is a struggle to be able to read. In reference to, I'll talk to 6 through 12 in regards to, are we doing more time? So at that point, you need to think about our RTI structures as well, and where we identify students who may be in Tier 2 or Tier 3 and are not reading on grade level. Still, the number one way that we have to work to increase literacy is strong instruction in Tier 1. But where 6th through 12th graders would benefit is having that time to move to an RTI group and be in a smaller group of students to be able to receive that literacy instruction. You want to talk about 3 through 5?
The answer is yes. There are 2 hours of literacy instruction expected in grades K through 5, so every classroom. There is 1 hour K through 5. It's considered knowledge building, where students have access to the complex text. They learn about lots of things about thematic trees, frogs, weather, those kinds of things. And then there's 1 hour of foundational literacy instruction in K2, and it's called language practice in grades 3 through 5.
Ms. Hill.
Thank you. I just wanted to hopefully add a point of clarity. We know we have very low reading scores. We know where we stand in the state. It's really important that we solve this and that we not take our foot off the gas. And I fear that this board may be sending some mixed messages of, is this too difficult? Are we asking too much from our teachers? We need to be asking this much. We need to be asking this much of our students. We need to be asking this much of our teachers. We need to be asking this much of our parents, and most certainly of you all as the administration. Our kids need to read. We as this board need to provide you with the resources that that you identify are key to that. This board talked for, golly, 45 minutes about whether or not we should buy a new curriculum or wait 2 years until, maybe we shouldn't do this right now. And what we know is we'd be in an even worse position than we are. We are making progress, and I'm thankful for that. And I think that a confident reader is certainly one who can learn to love to read. Thank you.
I'll just say, going back to your RTI groups, if none of y'all have been in your schools into the RTI labs or whatever they call them, the work that our students are getting in those, and they're usually 2 to 3 students at a table, it's pretty impressive the amount of one-on-one learning they're getting. And so I hope you're right, and in the next 2 years, as we get into full implementation, it will become more prevalent. I think it's been an issue forever. Couldn't read on grade level when I was in middle school, product of Hamilton County Schools. And so I think it's something that everyone struggles with, and I'm glad that we're putting in the work to hopefully reverse those numbers, and thank you. And I think first time, Ms. Hill, it might have been with me and you when we were in our new board orientation. Dr. Johnson showed us the graph of change and the cycle of change and how it hits, and I think we're probably in that dip phase right now where people are kind of burnt out and tired until they actually see results. Everything I've heard from teachers is that it's hard. it takes a lot of work, it's a lot of effort, but they enjoy it. They are seeing the progress that their students are making, and at the end of the day, that's what teachers care about. So I just encourage our teachers to keep on doing the good work and not take our foot off the gas. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we will move on from that. No more questions. With our board member disclaimer statement, we'll start with Ms. Thurman and work our way down.
Okay, I declare that I have one relative who works for the Hamilton County School System, and the board's vote on any of the budget or policies we're about to vote on may have an effect on my relative's employment. Even so, I hereby certify that I will cast my vote in the best interest of the school system.
I declare that I have a relative who works for the Hamilton County School System and that the board's vote may have an effect on my relative's employment. Even so, I hereby certify that I will cast my vote in the best interest of the school system.
I declare that I have a relative who works for the school system and that the board's vote on budget policies, etc., may have an effect on my relative's employment. Even so, I hereby certify that I will cast my vote in the best interest of the school system.
I declare that I have relatives who work for the school system and that the board's vote on most issues here may have an effect on my relatives' employment. Even so, I hereby certify that I will cast my vote in the best interest of the school system.
I declare I have a fiance who works for the school system, and the board's vote on budgets, policies, etc., may have an effect on my relative's employment. Even so, I hereby certify that I will cast my vote in the best interest of the school system.
I declare that I have a relative who works for the school system and that the board's vote on budget, policies, etc. may have an effect on my relative's employment. Even so, I hereby certify that I will cast my vote in the best interest of the school system.
I believe that is it. We will move down to the approval of the consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
You get a second?
Yeah,
Oh,
there's
okay.
Yeah.
Any items that need to be pulled? Mr. Walker.
8E1, please.
Ms. Thurman.
Yes, 8D3B. The budget amendments, the general operating amendments.
Gotcha. Anything else? Okay, roll call, please.
Mrs. Hill?
Yes.
Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Perez?
Yes.
Mrs. Robinson?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurman?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Wingate?
Roll call, please, Ms. Ford.
Yes. Yes.
Chairman McClendon?
Yes.
It's like deja vu.
Well, I was watching the agenda meeting and the other earlier today, sorry.
You're good. Mr. Walker.
Yeah, just a comment about the bullying. Appreciate the work that we do. I think that obviously we were all here last month when we had a young lady come up and talk about some issues. I pray that is one of the real rare occasions that went on for a year and a half or a while, and I appreciate Superintendent Robertson addressing that and continuing that conversation. What I would encourage the Department of Education, let me go back. The feel from some of the victims in the bullying cases feel like that they're not being heard in an effort to protect actual bully, and we care for all of the students, but there's some things that may feel out of balance. What I would encourage is maybe we get together and drill down further with Ms. Glenn and maybe open up I don't know if it's a committee or what we do, but open up a night that we can talk about that, and maybe it is a committee to review some policy, but just a little more, time to revisit with the community on how we handle those situations.
Ms. Jones.
I didn't pull it, but since James did, I just want to speak to this. Of course, I shared how I felt about the bullying situation. I feel like that about any instance in life. I did take the opportunity this week to speak with Ms. Glenn about the bullying report and what to update myself on the processes of how things go, because there had been some concerns in District 5 about some behaviors and some things that were going on in the school. What I want I want to share with the public from my conversation with Ms. Glenn is that, and I guess to James, I really don't think we need a committee. What I think more so is, as times change, and I made this statement to her and talking to her again today, is that when I was in high school in the 90s and middle school in the 80s and the 90s, we talked a lot about peer pressure, but I really don't think we experienced peer pressure back in the 80s and 90s the way I feel like it's more prevalent now with social media and all the other things that come about. And what I'm realizing is that a lot of peers my age, I mean, I have peers my age, people teach that are my mom's age. I mean, it's just a different way of time. And I think it's probably more so of a more, and Rhonda doesn't like this, but more professional development to our staff on what that looks like and how to truly address that and look at that. Not saying that they don't, because I'm not saying this, teachers, but to look at it through a parent's eye. I know a lot of times when I get calls, I try not to look at it through a board member's eye or through a connection to Hamilton County, but if that was EJ in that building or in that room, how would I want somebody to address that? And so I think we have to really think about that from that perspective, from the district level, and I'm not saying nobody isn't, I'm just sharing. From the district level and from the building level, if it was your kid, how would you want somebody to respond? And some of us may respond a little harsher, so I'm not saying that. But I'm just saying, think about it from that perspective. So when parents call and complain and do things, don't just say, oh, they're just being kids. Because kids, I love children, but kids these days are not the kids that I went to school with. It's just a different time, and so we can't take it lightly sometimes when things occur that kids are just being kids, because yes, they may be just being kids, but then sometimes it could be more strenuous situations. And what I don't want to happen is something to occur and some ill effect happens and we just were like, oh, well, they were kids being kids, and that really was not the case. So I think there's area for development there. I think parents are really in tune to their children, and they know if their kid, I mean, you know if your kid is a bully, let's just be honest. You know if your kid is a bully, you know if your kid is passive, you know if your kid is so sarcastic. I mean, I was a talker, my mama said, I know she talks, what else does she do? So you know your kid. So we have to make sure that parents are just being honest with who their kid is. Now, I do think that's important. Know your kid, but also that the staff is aware of how to truly address that, and if they're not comfortable in doing it, how to take that on. Because lastly, I want to share with the public, the way this happens is your school is able to address it due to the acceptable code of conduct and that kind of stuff, right? But then if you still have concerns, you are to reach out to Ms. Glenn, because that is where her office steps in, and that's where they're able to go into buildings and provide that additional support in those buildings to make sure that your child is safe. So if you're not getting what you need in the building, Ms. Glenn's office is there to help you, walk you through that path to get that support. So I just want to put that out there, because I don't want people to feel like Hamilton County is not, we don't have these things in place. It's just also, I'm learning this and I'm talking a lot, but that sometimes parents just don't know what our processes and policies and procedures are. So I want to make sure that people understand what that looks like.
Ms. Thurman.
Yeah, I not only, most of the time when I hear these bullying situations, I've been very troubled here of the recent calls I've gotten have been girls, been females. A lot of the bullying going on. I guess it's all fueled by a lot of social media, but that's very disturbing to me, because there's nothing that makes me any madder than a bully, especially a female bully. You know, the lady that did speak at the school board meeting a couple of months ago, or a month ago, I guess it was now. I don't put myself, if that was my daughter, I put myself, what if that was me? And how would I feel? And I was thinking back about even some of the administration, because sometimes I don't think things get quite taken care of, maybe like they should, and maybe we don't give it the attention. But I remembered the night that somebody banged on a window and every administrator got up and moved. They moved back here against this wall, knowing that we had all of the police officers here. We had police officers outside, we had police officers in here, we had the SRO officers, we had everybody in here. And they still got up and moved. And I was thinking, they were scared. Even with all of that protection, what about a little girl in a bathroom all by herself? We want to make sure that we're taken care of. Why don't we make sure that a little girl in a bathroom, or a little girl anywhere, or a little boy anywhere that's being bullied is not as protected as we are? That's what it broke my heart the other night when I was sitting here thinking. I thought, I thought that night, well, I know how I want to be in a foxhole with me. but because it just seemed like, you know, a knock on a window got a lot of people upset, and I'm thinking, yeah, we put our kids in that kind of position a lot of times, and I think we need to take this bullying a lot more serious than we do sometimes. But those are just some of my thoughts. And like I say, the female bullying is really the thing that has really caught my eye here of late. That's a trend that I've seen happen in the last year or so. And I think that's something that I'd like to see a little bit more breakdown on these numbers to see who's doing what. And I really want to see whether some of the discipline that we're doing, this peer mediation and this peer review and all this conflict resolution and all that is really what we need to be doing. If we need to look at that, if that's not accomplishing what we want it to, we might need to look at redoing that. And so I'm with some of the others that we'd like, with James, I think, said he would like to see us look at the policy a little bit more, maybe see exactly what we are doing and see if it's being effective. Thank you.
I wasn't here last month when that came up, so I didn't get to say kind of my piece on it. I went back and watched it, and I think to Ms. Thurman's point, you say, well, what if it was me? Personally, I was bullied out of my first elementary school in Hamilton County Schools. I had to go to a completely different, actually, my family moved to a different zone so I could go to a different elementary school. Sorry, Mom, if you're watching this, your blood pressure is probably going to be high, because even though I was in elementary school, depends on your relative of time.
No, but he absolutely opened himself.
Yeah,
right, I'm bullying.
Yeah,
he opened himself up.
I did. But I was severe bullying. I mean, broken arm, everything. Couldn't eat lunch. I mean, it was to a point where my parents literally had to move houses to get me into a new school. So it is personal to me on how we do this. It's not anything new. I do think, to Mrs. Jones' point, how do we combat our bullying is, I think, important. Kids nowadays, I'm 27, this thing and this computer don't leave my side. But if you're in middle school or high school, you can operate that thing 10 times faster than I can, and you know about 10 different apps than I do, from TikTok to Snapchat to WhatsApp to whatever else, that parents just either can't keep up with or the time to do it. So one thing I think about just in personal connection is, what are we using to educate our students, and is it of value to them? I remember sitting through all kinds of videos in high school and middle school that were made in the 80s and 90s that no one watched because they were made in the 80s and 90s. How do we make it relevant to our students so they understand that their actions, while they may seem small, they're actually very large and have lasting impacts in people's lives? So I think just challenging our administration, Karen, Glenn, to make sure that our curriculum, or whatever you want to call it, our program around that is relevant. And then how do we make sure our parents know the avenues? Because a lot of times parents don't know, and the first time it happens, it comes to us, and we have to give it to Karen, Glenn, and it's bypassed. It goes the opposite way of the way it should. And so I just think that maybe we look at how we handle that. I mean, these kids the last 2 years have been through something that no one else has been through for 100 years since the last pandemic, and so we have to make sure we're catering to that. But I think the relevancy part in how we talk to our students, I mean, a lot of them are smart and they know how to operate around rules and stuff, so we have to just be mindful of that and invest in that, because personally, to me, it matters, and I'm glad to see our numbers and breaking it down and that we're taking it serious. I mean, out of the 102 confirmed cases for the first semester, I mean, 64 of them involved suspensions, or really 69 of them involved suspensions of some sort. So we're taking it serious. I just think we might need to do a reset coming out of this time period we're at, and making sure that we're doing everything we can and using the best programs that are available. Anything else on that? Okay, do I have a motion?
We don't have to, it's just a report.
Oh, yep, thank you. Ms. Thurman.
Yes, on this budget amendment, general purpose here, the transfer between accounts to reclassify existing budget appropriations between various accounts is indicated. Why are we doing this? Can you, Mary Ellen? I mean, what accounts are they? I mean, why? I
Right,
guess.
and I mean, this is, I think we do every year. We kind of do some
Yeah.
true ups where we're shifting resources. So some of it's just operational and in departments where they.
There's about 20 pages, and I just wondered.
Yeah,
and
and
they're about 24 or something like that.
Yeah,
pages?
yeah.
Okay.
Yep, and this is, I mean, a lot of it's customary, so part of it is a department, they want to move their lines from contracted services to office supplies, so it's individual departments shifting within their budgets. Some of it is, we did a true up of our teacher accounts, so we had shifted and corrected, so we did a full count of where our actual teachers were and shifted the budgets to correct. That's the major part of it, is
Right.
shifting that and changing kind of a little structure in how we're doing the teacher budgeting. So that's what most of it was. But I think there's always kind of been a big January, February true up, and so
Okay.
that's what this is.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I move to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Hill? Yes. Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Perez?
Yes.
Mrs. Robinson?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurman?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Wingate?
Yes.
Chairman McClendon?
Yes. Okay, that moves us down to administrative business matters. The approval of special courses for 2022-2023.
Second.
Could they use their mic, please?
Move to approve.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you.
Any discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Mrs. Hill?
Yes.
Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Perez?
Yes.
Mrs. Robinson?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurman?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Wingate?
Yes.
Chairman McClendon?
Yes. That brings us down to delegations. I will turn it over to Vice Chair Robertson.
How do we control our new clock? All right. Okay. This is great. We need to update the little speech. Okay. All right. Our first delegate is Jordan Wilson, speaking regarding some books that are in the school system from District 1. Mr. Wilson? Oh, here we are. Great. Okay, and then we also have a second delegate, April Nielsen. I'm going to read this once, so Ms. Nielsen, if you don't mind to listen up. Thank you for your interest in addressing the Hamilton County Board of Education. During your presentation, please address the board as a whole, not individual board members or administrators. Also, please do not present complaints or concerns you have about an individual employee of the school system. If you wish to voice those complaints and concerns, you should contact the central office and ask for a meeting with the superintendent, since the superintendent is responsible for individual employees. Please limit your remarks to 5 minutes. Mrs. Ford will start the clock, and you'll be able to watch your time there. You may begin.
Good evening. My name is Jordan Wilson. As a 2020 alumni of Saude Daisy High School, I am a proud graduate of what this system accomplishes. And considering that, my purpose here is that I bring to you some books that the organization Moms for Social Justice has supported into our school system. At the very outset, I want to be entirely clear that I am not here to pressure the board into canceling these books, but rather permission that a complementary organization could provide alternatives. The notebooks I gave you contain citations of the books supported by the organization, and while there's roughly 16 in there, that's only some of them, and I'll only be able to get to 3 tonight. What I found within them details murder, sexual content, rape, pedophilia, crude language, and bestiality. And to those of you behind me, I ask that any underage people would listen with discretion, because the topics at hand are beyond inappropriate in nature, and while such may not be the place for these things, if our children must read them, we must know. In Stephen Chbosky's Perks of Being a Wallflower, he recounts the novel as a story showing the familiar high school course of, quote, sex, drugs, and the Rocky Horror Picture Show. On page 2, and quite quickly, I do want to absolutely stress that if you have a younger child, listen with discretion or let them leave the room, because these are beyond obscene. Quote, I was with Sam and we were both naked and her legs are spread over the sides of the couch. End quote. Quote, do you know what masturbation is?
Give us a minute to let our kids leave then.
Yes, sir. I would thoroughly love to do that.
There was one person with their kids leaving when you continued to read.
Quote, masturbation is when you rub your...
Hold on, sir. They're still in here.
Okay. Well, is my time, can I have my time?
Okay, it's all right.
I can't have my time back. Yes, ma'am. Quote, masturbation is when you rub your genitals until you have an orgasm. Wow, end quote. Quote, this is page 30 to 31. The main character is hiding in his room at a party when a couple walks in. Quote, these are quotes. And then he put his hand down her pants as she started moaning. She reached to take off her pants, but she started crying really hard. So he reached for his own. He pulled his pants and underwear down to his knees. End quote. Quote, please, Dave, no. End quote. Quote, and she grabbed his penis with her hands and started moving it. After a few minutes, the boy pushed the girl's head down and she started to kiss his penis. She was still crying. Finally, she stopped crying because he put his penis in her mouth. And I don't think you can cry in that position. End quote. Quote, even when I covered my ears, I could still hear her say no. End quote. On page 159 of the same book, quote, one day CB got so drunk at a party that he tried to have sex with the host's dog. Secondly, we come to A Clockwork Orange by Anthony Burgess. And I actually had to go through this book with a word key as the author invents his own language. So where I would normally quote, there will be a description of the scene, but still the page number for your reference. On page 27 to 29, the gang strolls out to the countryside and comes upon a little cabin home. The gang then devises a plan and con their way inside. They first notice the wife with, quote, real good breasts on her, end quote. And when they notice that, they immediately spring into action and jump the husband, beating him until they bound him to a chair. Then Alex hunts the wife and beats her until he is able to lock her arms behind her and rips her clothes away, and details that her breasts, quote, exhibited their pink nipples, end quote. Then Alex undresses and gets, quote, ready for the plunge, end quote. After Alex, the rest of the gang takes turns raping the woman in a, quote, beastly, snorty, howly sort of way. The woman then dies from the severe injuries of the 15-year-old's gang rape. On page 51, Alex convinces two 10-year-old girls to not go to school and instead come to where he lives. Upon arriving into his room, Alex takes some sort of injection and gives the girls alcohol and gets them to where, quote, they were both very, very drunken and could hardly feel very much, end quote. He then rapes the young girls, described as if he, quote, leapt on them, raping them so bad that they were, quote, bruised and pouty. Once the girls left his house screaming, he sat in his bed naked and proud. And lastly, we come to The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. This summer, Handmaid's Tale was actually recommended at my alma mater, Saudi Daisy High School, where my sister picked up the book, read it, and was so shocked by its obscenities that she could not finish it. On page 71, quote, it's Janine telling about how she was gang raped at 14 and had an abortion. She seemed almost proud of it, end quote. Page 94, quote, Serena Joy grips my hands as if it is she, not I, who's being fucked, as if she finds it either pleasurable or painful, and the commander fucks, with a regular 2-4 marching stroke, on and on like a tap dripping. It's as if he's somewhere else waiting for himself to come. But isn't this everyone's wet dream? 2 women at once? He comes at last with a stifled groan as of relief. The juice of the commander runs down my legs, end quote. Page 118, quote, women kneeling, sucking penises or guns, women hanging from trees or upside down, naked with their legs being held apart, women being raped, beaten up, killed. Once we had to watch a woman being cut slowly into pieces, her fingers and breasts snipped off with garden shears, her stomach slit open and her intestines pulled out, end quote. In conclusion, I want to restate that I bring these before you not with the proposition to cancel these books, but rather that a complementary organization would have the approval to go alongside Moms for Social Justice and give something
Thank you so much. Your time is
to
up.
our children more edifying.
No, it has been stopped there.
Simply for 30 seconds. 30 seconds.
I
can
understand,
finish.
but unfortunately, you are no different than anyone
Ma'am,
else.
I understand that.
He got interrupted for 30 seconds. I gave him 30 seconds. I communicated that to Ms.
And you
Ford.
were watching for 30 seconds.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right.
If you want to continue that thought, then we'll.
Yes, sir.
let you
I
go.
remember listening to a previous session here around October in which Taylor Lyons, who represents Moms for Social Justice, said there are movements to, quote, ban certain books and ideas that contain messages that challenge the status quo and prevent diverse experiences in life and perspectives. Is this what we will call diverse perspectives for our children? Is this what we will call all walks of life? We must have a contrast to these horrendous novels. And having brought these before you, I want to ask directly for the permission that the board would provide approval that a complementary organization could go alongside. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Okay, Mrs. Nielsen. April Nielsen. Great. All right, you may begin.
Chairman, members of the board, and school leadership, I'm here today representing the parents and students of the International Baccalaureate program at Ottawa High School, and we are here to petition you to save our program. Recently, school administration announced that the International Baccalaureate Program, or IB for short, will be disbanded and no longer offered. Parents and community members who oppose this decision have rallied together to combine our efforts in order to see it reversed. This includes the students themselves, who of their own accord have compiled a document for board members and school leaders that contains important facts and information about the IB program they want you to know. Chairman, with your permission, I'd like to invite the students at this time to come forward and deliver their document to members of the board and district leaders.
Yeah, if you'll hand them to Ms. Ford, she'll get them to us.
Okay, thank you. This is a very intelligent and well-spoken group of students, and I know you will find this paper is thoroughly researched, presented clearly, and will give you the information you need that I do not have adequate time to present to you. Please, I implore you to read it. The IB program is a future-ready institute or choice school option that is available to all students of Hamilton County. It is only offered in 2 schools in the entire school district, Ottawa and Signal Mountain. The option presented to parents and students who wish to remain a part of the program is to transfer to Signal Mountain High with no transportation provided. Signal Mountain is unique in its location, making it the hardest school for the majority of families to access. It is not a realistic expectation that parents spend 20 hours a week commuting from the Ottawa area in order for their students to remain in the program. Furthermore, because that school is not accessible to the majority of families in Hamilton County, you are essentially cutting off their access to this program. In respect to the number of students who want to participate, at Ottawa High School there are over 100 students who are participating in the IB program if we include those who are in pre-IB, meaning freshmen and sophomore currently taking prerequisites to be in the program. This number doesn't even account for the rising 8th graders who have applied for the IB program in the school lottery. It is a fact that there are students who are put on a wait list to be a part of this program at Ottawa High School. I think that demonstrates that there is definitely a desire for members of the community to have access to this program. Now that the lottery option has ended, what will the families do who were just informed today that their students have been removed from the wait list for the program? Offering IB only at Signal Mountain will not satisfy the demand in our community for this program. I would also like to represent the many families I've spoken to who have indicated that they moved to the Ottawa area specifically for their child to have access to the IB program. Now these parents are left in a position that cannot be remedied if the IB program is cut. The administration has offered to increase the AP program at Ottawa High School as a replacement for the IB program. As parents and students, we strongly oppose this decision. While the AP program has benefit and merit, it is not a replacement for the IB program for a number of reasons that have been outlined in the document. The IB program is unrivaled by any other program offered in the United States as far as giving students a higher acceptance rate into the top 25 universities. The partnership between IB and UTC also offers advantages to the students here locally who wish to remain in Chattanooga to further their education. When it comes to college credit, the IB program is unmatched as well. The statistics for Ottawa High School alone demonstrate that. Records Online report that of all the AP students who took their final exams to gain college credit, only 48% of the students passed those exams. In comparison, 78% of the IB students at Ottawa High School received college credit. As parents, we request that the program with a higher success rate for our children be the program that is offered. We do not accept AP as an adequate replacement for it. But you do not have to take my word for it. I would like Jake Dawes, a senior at Ottawa, to share his experience with the program.
I once thought that education was just about passing a test. I once was a C and D student myself who did not give a second thought to my education. I was not amused by a standard education which asked me to memorize information and fill in a bubble. Learning about the IB program and its values-based teaching is what inspired me to take hold of my own education. IB taught me about a growth mindset and that it was my choice where I wanted my education to go. IB goes above and beyond by linking knowledge to the 7 classes, creating a better understanding of a topic, and using what I learned to form my own ideas. Overall, creating an education path that strengthened my critical thinking. Without IB, I wouldn't be where I am today. A student who once was a C/D student who failed kindergarten and had a hard time reading is now a straight A student who is number 3 in his class, following 2 other IB students, all because of IB. Because don't forget about the students like me that need the freedom in their learning that IB gives them.
Sorry, your time is up.
Thank
you so much to both of you.
We still have a meeting going on. Ms. Jones has the floor.
So, I mean, Neely's not here. Dr. Stewart's not here. So, Justin, you're up. I need some clarity, please. I'm confused. What's happening here? I mean, like, not, I mean, I know what just happened here. I'm saying what's happening to the IB
several
program.
things are at play here. Essentially, what you have happening, you have a high school that's trying to run side by side two advanced placement pathways. You have IB, you have AP. Same thing's happening at Signal Mountain right now. They've tried to run both. It's not sustainable. You've got classes with, 12 kids in them, and then on the other hand, you have classes for Algebra 1, Algebra 2 that have 28, 29 classes or students in them. And so when you do the math in terms of sections and how many kids are currently enrolled and expressing interest in IB, it's difficult to justify running both of them. Signal Mountain's making the exact opposite decision. They're shutting off all AP classes, focusing on IB. So this has happened multiple times before. The JROTC group that you saw come up at the beginning came from Sequoia last year because we couldn't get kids enrolled in it. And so these are tough decisions. They're decisions that we've got to make as an administration when we're tasked with running on a limited budget. And if we could staff and support every single program across the entire district, those are decisions that we would make. But currently, looking at Ooltewah specifically, you've got over 200 kids that are currently enrolled in AP classes, and currently enrolled in IB, you have 61. So you've got to make decisions, and the decision at Ooltewah is to double down on AP so that kids can still continue to have advanced opportunities. They're committed to the juniors finishing it out through next year so that the juniors that are already in the IB program will graduate with an IB diploma. So essentially, that's what the decisions come down to.
So, is it a possibility to put IB in another high school in the valley? I know that sounds bad, but I mean in the valley. Neither one of my high schools have IB.
I think it certainly is, and I think that when we make decisions like this, we have to make decisions like forward thinking.
Right.
To be honest with you, if it were my decision years ago, you would never have started an IB and an AP program in the same high school. That's just the reality of it. So absolutely, there's opportunities for us to start one. What I would say is if we do it, you've got to make a decision. Are you doing AP or are you doing IB?
Well, I guess I know this can't be decided tonight. I guess I was just thinking to support the students in the valley that are in IB. But I know IB is expensive. I know that it's an expensive program. But just, I don't know. I guess I was looking at maybe a school that maybe the ratio was different AP wise. So then you'd have I don't know. I'm just thinking aloud, people, so don't go by me. I'm trying to think out loud. But I guess the court, clearly this is a conversation to have further, but I just wanted to kind of get some context to what the concern, or why the concern, or why the closing of the program.
We charge our principals with making hard decisions, and we charge our principals when they aren't performing or the school is not performing where it should be, and we hold them accountable. I would think that those of us that have looked at academic performance at Ooltewah in the last several years would say it's not performing where it needs to be. Ms. Hollis has been there for a year and is making a very difficult decision. I'm familiar with those difficult decisions. I had to do the exact same thing at Red Bank, where I closed a teaching and learning academy because it was under-enrolled and we were not performing where we needed to perform. We were a level 1 high school at the time. we have to be clear about what we expect for our administration. Do we want schools that are performing high? Do we want to offer every single opportunity? We can, but again, like, there are times where you've got to make difficult decisions. The difficult decision here for Ms. Hollis was, got 2 programs. This one's under-enrolled. This one, has more kids. Which one are we going to go with? We can continue this conversation, as I said, going through next year. Are the juniors plan in place for them to graduate with an IB diploma? I admit, asking parents to drive Signal Mountain is not an option. Ms. Jones's point, we have maybe a year and a half to look if there's another option, somewhere closer that would focus strictly on IB.
Ms. Robinson.
Yeah, I appreciate Kritz's comments and her questions. Very similar to the questions I have too, which is, are there alternatives? You're right, we do ask our principals to make really hard decisions, and you're right, it's important that we give clear direction, which is our desire for high-performing schools. I think that from my view of the events that panned out, I would like to ask that we make sure that we come up with a I just feel like we could have maybe informed families a little differently. I'm told, and I don't have a dog in your hunt. I don't have a dog in your fight because I'm not at your school, but I saw the email that went out to you, and I think I would have been really mad. Well, I'm so sorry. You can't speak during our. It's cool. Yeah, we won't kick you out, but can't talk. Thank you. Anyways, I just think that I hear you, I feel you, I support Principal Hollis. I'm not saying necessarily in the decision she had to make, but just in general, you're right. We ask them to make hard decisions. This is not the caliber of communication, though, that I think Hamilton County has risen to. I just think that this could have been presented differently. So that's my feedback as a board member. But to Kritz's points and questions, gosh, what are the alternatives? I represent I'm sorry, I'm just blanking on the name right now. The school at Chat State, Collegiate High. Yeah, and such a parallel program to IB. Maybe there are ways for us to tap in to that school or, to just the other options we have. So I just would really like to see us figure this out. I mean, if a student has a desire to go to a certain program, and that's the whole point of our Future Readies, right? So, but I also challenge the board to really think about how do we help these Ooltewah students get to Signal Mountain if that's where they want to go. We are constantly battling transportation, and we constantly say, nope, not our responsibility. But I'm sorry, normally it's my students, the inner city students, being told that they can't have transportation somewhere or can't have this or that. But this is now on the other side of the county, and we're seeing the same effect. And I just think that the transportation issue affects every single student. And this board needs to figure that out. Absolutely, especially with this budget season coming up. So I think that you guys, you parents, should push us to think creatively about transportation so that your students can have what they want. So, but thank you.
Let's take another trip on the Tucker time machine. Not too long ago. If elementary school was yesterday, high school was this morning.
Couple hours.
Just got back. Yeah, just got back. Graduated from Ooltewah 2013. Was part of the student leadership team that brought IB to Ooltewah High School with Beverly Hollingsworth. And as me and Dr. Robertson have talked about this and people have reached out to me, I've been in a really weird place about it because coming from this standpoint, it's feasibility, efficiency, that kind of thing. But y'all, I don't know if y'all know how hard it is to get an IB accreditation in your school, but it's hard and it's a lot of money. And so alternatives, this isn't like you can start an AP program or a dual enrollment program. This is probably 2 years of work that goes into just being even able to submit your credentials and your thing there. So, I think I actually just saw the email this afternoon, and I kind of agree it's not to the standard that we have set at Hamilton County schools to go to our parents. Texting with Dr. Robertson back and forth, I think we need to make sure we exhaust all our options. In this, I think we saw what our foundation can do, and how do we start having those conversations. There's a lot of big corporations out there, and a lot of their employees are moving to Ottawa, and how do we say, one thing that we've said is, and I've heard from our mayor and our county commissioners and the city mayor, is when they get in a room with people to attract their businesses here, there's not a lot of question marks except education. And we have Signal Mountain and we have Ottawa that offer pretty much the best education kind of platform you can get in a public education. And so I'm torn on this, and I get why the decision was made. I don't know if all the options were exhausted to try to remedy that. And I'm happy to, as a proud Ottawa alum, to get out there and beat on doors and go meet with people to make sure we can do whatever we can. If we can't, we can't. We fought the fight. But just sitting here, I do want to remind us as a board and our administration that the saying behind us says, all children thrive and experience a future without limits. It's a limit. And I'm not saying that, I'm not saying that as a jab to Ms. Hollis or to Dr. Robertson. I think as a community, we have to start valuing education and how we prioritize our budgeting. And when we come to budget season, folks, at the end of the day, that's why this decision is made. We don't have the money to support this program and the other program. We're making our students choose and putting a limit on that. So when we get into budget season, like, we have to have these conversations. We can't have these conversations in July or August or December or February. These conversations happen during budget season, and they affect the rest of the year. So, like I said, I'm torn because I put a lot of time as a student and did a lot of things to get that program there and never got to benefit from it. Probably wouldn't have got in it anyway. Beside the point. But I just think that if we're going to, I think we just have to, we have to exhaust all our options. And I know Dr. Robertson, and having conversations with him, will do that. And if we can't, we can't. But I hope that we can at least do something and communicate to our families some kind of remedy as we move forward. Thanks. With that,
Ms. Jones.
Oh, Ms. Jones, sorry.
One quick question, again, and you may not know this answer either, Justin. If I'm not mistaken, Mountain Education pays into a portion of the IB at Signal. Do they donate a portion to that? I mean, you don't have to know
not
the answer.
directly to IB. I don't know the historical piece of if they had some part of the initial upfront cost, but currently they're not supporting directly IB. And again, that's why Signal Mountain's having to make a hard decision about IB or AP.
Okay, I just knew in the past, I thought maybe, with the way they fund, it often offsets to allow them to fund differently. And I was just thinking with the D9 Foundation, well, y'all ain't in 9 no more.
I'd have to do some research, but I believe
I was about to
that.
think with the D9,
I was
though, they
thinking
could-
maybe they paid, there's a fee every year to have it, right? We have to pay
I don't-
thousands of, there's
I'm
quite a few fees.
95% sure that they're not directly supporting
Yeah.
anything with IB anymore. I'll research that
If
and get back
if
to
I
you.
remember correctly, they helped with the upfront costs,
That's right.
and
Okay.
Volkswagen helped.
That's what I was saying. I
Ottawa
don't know the
for
historical of
theirs
if they
and
did
some
or
of their
Okay.
art stuff.
not.
All right, see, I just was, I'm just once again trying to see, sorry.
Mr. Perez.
So, I actually just want you parents, I don't want to say much because I haven't read this, and this is literally the first I've heard of this, so I apologize. And I also made a note about Signal Mountain, which I do represent, which is the first time I heard it too. But I do want you to know, as a parent of 3 students who've been through IB, one's going into 11, so I don't know what that falls, or is going into IB. My last one, I understand the value of the program and what you've gained. I also know it's not for everybody as far as students, so that creates a bit of a tension, right, for some students who are not ready for an IB program. And so, I don't have anything else to say that other than thank you for bringing this to our attention as a board, and I don't want to say that I have an answer, because we don't have an answer, and you've heard it here. I think your comment, Chairman McClendon, about without limits is true of Ottawa, Signal Mountain, and hopefully every school in our district one day, where we are offering absolutely every opportunity to every student to reach their highest potential. But you also heard, and as a community, you've heard many times, we can't do that without also really being supportive of those opportunities as a community and figuring out how we do it. So that's why I bring up the foundation and other things. We just, you know, if we don't want it one way, we got to figure it out the other way, and or we just can't have it. And that's just the reality. So, so anyways, I do want to say that you've been heard, and I'm sure we've got very capable people who will think through this.
Okay. Now with that, we'll go to information only. You have your legal services report in your agenda.
Mr. Chairman.
Sorry, Mr. Smith.
On the legal services, it says summary. I know several years ago, we kind of went from the format of fee for service to it was a contractual kind of thing. I would like to see, it says summary. A summary to me would be some kind of narrative as to what work's been performed. This looks like an invoice. It doesn't look like a summary of anything. So I would like to just a narrative of what's taking place. That's a request.
Sounds good.
Send that every month to the central office, and because it's confidential, because it contains specific information about conversations with the board and with officials. But it's certainly available anytime any board member wants to look at it.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you for that. With that, we'll go to events and announcements. Monday is President's Day. Schools are closed. Tuesday, February 22nd, we will have the second book review committee. We'll have our board agenda session on March 14th, and then our next board meeting on March 17th. Ms. Robinson.
Yeah, I was actually curious, can we get an update on the book review committee and what the next steps are?
The next steps are, when we come back, we're going to be looking at the policy and how we can change the policy or make recommendations to the board for the policy. The first meeting was just an informational type meeting, gave a lot of information out to the committee members. A lot of questions were asked, and I think this time maybe we'll just get down to the brass tacks about how can we change the policy to make it more uniform across the district, because right now we're just all over the map. And a lot of it just lands on the librarian, what the librarian wants in there. Of course, that same librarian may not be there, you know, the next year or something. So we're just going to try to make it uniform across the district and make sure that the policy that we have is being followed. If not, change, you know, see where it needs to be changed or enhanced in some way to make it more clear about what the board expects.
Any other announcements? Okay. With that, we will adjourn.